In the shadows of historical conflicts between European settlers and Native American tribes, the brutal practice of running the gauntlet emerges as a chilling testament to the extremes of human cruelty and endurance. This essay delves into the harrowing experiences of individuals, often settlers, captured during times of warfare, who were forced to run a treacherous gauntlet, facing a barrage of physical and psychological torment. These grim episodes were not mere aberrations, but rather deeply embedded within the fabric of Native American societies, reflecting complex cultural dynamics and the harsh realities of survival in a tumultuous era. The Gauntlet, a ritualistic form of punishment, went beyond the physical toll it exacted on its victims. It was a ritual laden with symbolism, carrying implications that reached far beyond the immediate pain inflicted. Through a careful examination of historical records, we aim to unravel the complexities surrounding running the gauntlet, recognizing its role as a grim intersection where cultural norms, warfare tactics, and the limits of human endurance converged on the American frontier. The term running the gauntlet is historically associated with the fundamental concept of subjecting a condemned individual to navigate, whether partially or completely unclothed, through dual rows of comrades armed with clubs, whips, switches, or bare fists, bore no novelty. This punitive practice had its roots in the military disciplines of ancient Greek and Roman armies, later transplanting itself into diverse European military entities and academies. The term gauntlet, while bearing an auditory resemblance to the French designation for an armored or robust military glove, diverges in origin. Its etymology traces back to the Swedish words signifying a lane or course for running, encapsulating the essence of a gauntlet. Within European military frameworks, the gauntlet was perceived as a less degrading form of retribution, affording an offender the opportunity to endure punishment amidst comrades, unbound and unencumbered by a post for flogging. Although the infliction of excessive blows could lead to a fatality, the gauntlet wasn't invariably a precursor to execution. Military institutions also embraced the gauntlet as a punitive measure or initiation into the folds of a hazing ritual. In 1637, the Iroquois captives found themselves ensnared in rituals of torment, echoing across the Atlantic coast of North America. When marauding parties returned to their villages, captives were routinely compelled to navigate the gauntlet. The ferocity of the ordeal fluctuated in tandem with the captor's objectives. When the intention veered towards adopting the prisoners, the gauntlet transformed into an initiation rite, symbolically obliterating the captive's former identity and ushering them into an adoptive clan. Conversely, in other scenarios, the gauntlet facilitated collective participation in the ritual of vengeance. Both tormentors and the tormented were cognizant of their respective roles, with both parties obliged to showcase mastery over the volatile interplay of emotions and reason. The gauntlet, a practice uniquely wielded by Eastern woodland Native Americans, served as a crucible to assess the fortitude of their captives. Ensnared in this trial, the prisoners found themselves compelled to traverse the space between two converging lines of Native individuals, each armed with a menacing arsenal of sticks, clubs, or flinging stones. The captives' conduct during this harrowing run through the gauntlet became a subject of meticulous scrutiny, a litmus test for their resilience and mettle. Those who faltered, cowering in the face of the impending onslaught, found themselves deemed unworthy of adoption and, on occasion, met their fate at the hands of their captors. Custom details oscillated across these eastern woodland tribes, each infusing their unique essence into the ritual. As the gauntlet unfolded, a common prelude prevailed. Captives were routinely stripped of their garments, leaving them bereft of even the meager shield provided by clothing or footwear. The runners embarked on this odyssey, exposed and vulnerable, their naked bodies laid bare to the relentless gauntlet's onslaught. Variability manifested in the treatment of the captives' extremities, sometimes bound, rendering them at the mercy of their tormentors, while in other instances, a precarious liberty was granted, permitting the defense of their hands and their faces. The dichotomy between restraint and freedom underscored the psychological and physical dimensions of the gauntlet, a sinister dance of survival. Success in traversing the gauntlet eluded some as they succumbed to the unforgiving ground beneath. The consequence was swift and brutal. Beatings rained upon them until they found the strength to rise again, or, in a cruel twist of fate, were banished back to the starting point, compelled to embark on the grueling journey anew. For some, the journey proved insurmountable, sealing their fate in the clutches of death, their bodies bearing the scars of broken bones and bloody lacerations. Skulls were not spared the brutality of being cracked open. Yet, the paradox emerged in the aftermath of perseverance. Those who defied the odds and emerged triumphant found an unexpected twist in their narrative. The very natives who had orchestrated the gauntlet now turned caregivers, extending a hand to those who displayed exceptional endurance or prowess. This newfound recognition could lead to adoption into the tribe, a strange twist of fate that turned an adversary into kin, or a more sinister destiny awaited: enslavement. Contrastingly for some, the Odyssey concluded in the ultimate extinguishment of life, a fate meted out through immolation at the stake or by other gruesome means, a chilling denouement to the visceral theater of the gauntlet. There have been numerous instances of famous folks surviving their run through the gauntlet. Those lucky enough to live and tell the tale withhold no details in their plight, and offer fascinating perspectives on one of the most common yet unbearable facets of torture. One such survivor was James Smith, a rugged frontiersman, tiller of the land, and stalwart soldier in the tapestry of British North America. At the helm of the Black Boys, a resolute cadre of Pennsylvania men, he orchestrated a 9-month insurrection against British dominion a decade before the eruption of the American Revolutionary War. As the Revolutionary War unfurled its banners, Smith assumed the mantle of a colonel in the Pennsylvania militia, navigating the tumultuous currents of rebellion. The year 1755 saw Smith toiling on the Braddock Road, a sinuous path carved westward from Alexandria, Virginia, in support of General Edward Braddock's ill-fated crusade against the French. Amidst the unfolding drama, destiny took a dark turn. Ensnared by Delaware natives, Smith found himself thrust into the ominous embrace of Fort Duquesne, nestled at the convergence of the Ohio River's tributaries. It was within the formidable confines of Fort Duquesne that Smith faced his trial by Gauntlet. The air crackled with tension as he was compelled to navigate this corridor of adversity. The following is an extended description of running the Gauntlet, as written by James Smith himself. On approaching the fort, through large numbers of naked, painted savages who were formed into 2 long ranks, I was obliged to run the gauntlet. I was told that if I ran quick, it would be so much the better, as they would quit when I got to the end of the ranks. I started in the race with all the vigor and resolution I was capable of exerting. When I got near the end of the lines, I was struck to the ground with a stick or the handle of a tomahawk. On recovering my senses, I endeavored to renew the race, but as I rose, someone threw sand in my eyes, which blinded me so that I could not see where to run. They continued beating me until I was insensible, but before I lost consciousness, I remember wishing they would strike the final blow, for I thought they intended killing me, and that they were too long about it. I was sent to the hospital and carefully tended by a French doctor, and recovered quicker than I expected. I asked a Delaware Indian who could speak some English if I had done anything to offend them, which caused them to beat me so unmercifully. No, he replied, it was only an old custom the Indians had, and was like, "How do you do?" After this, he said, "You will be used well." Another famed frontiersman, Simon Kenton, suffered yet survived a similar situation. After being captured by the Shawnee in the 1770s, he was stripped and bound to a stake. Kenton then endured a nightmarish series of gauntlet runs, orchestrated by a frenzied crowd of Shawnee tribe folk. These spectacles included dancing, hooting, and relentless torment until midnight. Once he was released from the stake, Kenton faced the final morning gauntlet, a perilous sprint between two lines of 300 armed natives. Despite enduring blows, wounds, and a knife-wielding attacker, he collapsed near the council house. Subsequent punishment involved beatings, kicks, and being dragged through the mud. Surviving against the odds, Kenton faced a grim judgment, becoming a public sacrifice in Wapatamika. His escape attempts were thwarted until fellow frontiersman and interpreter Simon Girty saved him. Kenton would be captured and administered further gauntlet torture a second time, before a second interpreter for the British Indian Department, Pierre Drouillard, intervened. At this point, Kenton's courage he displayed, despite running gauntlet after gauntlet, was praised by his Shawnee captors. They respected Kenton henceforth, and a Shawnee woman who had lost her own son in battle adopted the former prisoner. He even received a Shawnee name for his endurance, called Kadahotha, meaning condemned man. Two other American frontier figures, the legendary John Stark and Daniel Boone, were known for their strength and persevering through the gauntlet. They employed a strategy rarely seen in history as they fought back during their ultimate runs. Both Stark and Boone were allowed to face the gauntlet without shackles or ties around their hands, and thus used their free hands to grab at the weapons flashing before their faces. Major General John Stark was the first to muster up the courage. During his run of the gauntlet in 1752, Stark grabbed a stick from the nearest Abenaki tribesman and beat his adversary before he could render punishment. The Abenaki chief couldn't help but watch with awe as Stark fought back. Once Stark was finished, he was adopted into the band and taken care of through the remainder of winter. Daniel Boone shared a similar fate. On the 7th of February in 1778, Boone and 29 companions found themselves in the clutches of Shawnee warriors while they were engaged in salt preparation for Fort Boonesborough. In a desperate bid for mercy, Boone addressed War Chief Blackfish and his council of war. Despite Blackfish sparing them initially, Boone was not out of the woods. He was condemned to endure the perilous gauntlet. The gauntlet's path, hastily trampled into ankle-deep snow, extended approximately 100 yards. Gloating warriors danced along its edges, brandishing weapons such as lashing switches, hickory whipping sticks, and war clubs. The Shawnees reveled in their bold display, creating a shivering aisle of aggression that echoed with the fierce cries of war. Guided by Blackfish through the tumultuous assembly, Boone was positioned at the open end of the row. Through the interpreter Pompey, believed to be a former slave from Virginia residing amongst the Shawnee, Blackfish instructed Captain Boone to attempt a daring sprint to the pole at the far end of the row without falling. The consequence of failure was nothing short of a fatal beating. However, defying expectations and stripping down to his clout and leggings, Boone took an unexpected course of action. He charged forward, employing deceptive feints and agile maneuvers. And like a stone released from a sling, he navigated the narrowing lane amid the cacophony of taunts and the thrashing limbs of his Shawnee captors. Ignoring the pain from his torn neck and bleeding back, Boone pressed on until he spotted a formidable obstacle, a broad, squat figure, greasy and menacing, blocking the path's conclusion. Undeterred, Boone braced himself and charged headlong, delivering a powerful headbutt to the warrior's gut reminiscent of a he-goat. When the obstacle overcame, he seized the safety of the post. It was only then that the triumphant sounds of their laughter reached Boone's ears. Blackfish, evidently impressed, expressed his satisfaction. Captain Boone, he proclaimed, had proven himself a great warrior through his resilience and strategic prowess in the face of a daunting gauntlet. Afterwards, Boone and his 29 men were taken to modern-day Chillicothe, Ohio, and 10 of them, including Boone, were adopted into Blackfish's band of Halagatha. Women were not spared from the gauntlet either, whether it be participants or victims. In the 17th century, a Jesuit missionary documented a gruesome instance of torture inflicted upon an Iroquois captive by a gauntlet of Huron women and children. The brutality unfolded as they stabbed, cut, and burned the victim's limbs, with one woman resorting to attempting to gnaw off his finger. Shockingly, she succeeded in hacking off the finger, then proceeded to roast it. To further illustrate the disturbing scene, she offered the roasted finger to children, who continued to suck on it for an extended period. The acceptance and even endorsement of such violence by indigenous women within these communities stood in stark contrast to prevailing European notions of appropriate feminine behavior. On the side of victims, Susanna Willard Johnson, a Massachusetts housewife, found herself ensnared by Abenaki forces during the tumultuous era of the French and Indian War. Her harrowing experience included being compelled to navigate the daunting challenge of running the gauntlet. Notably, her circumstances, likely influenced by having recently given birth, allowed her a somewhat merciful passage through the line, receiving only light blows. While certain tribes implemented regulations, such as prohibiting bladed instruments or restricting the number of strikes per individual, the gauntlet, for many unfortunate captives, served as a grim prelude to an inevitable demise. The best outcome for the hapless settler subjected to this ordeal was often to succumb during the brutal process, as survival offered little solace amid the grim reality of impending death. As though eastern woodland tribes were slowly either colonized, killed off, or assimilated into United States society, running the gauntlet became nothing more than a chapter in colonial history books, Native American culture, and frontier folklore at large. All we can do is look back and appreciate the time and place in which we were born.